expert, the guy. Matty's got jokes and a wild ride. 30 minutes, no time to spare. Stack your lineup, win anywhere. SuperCoach Halfa. Get your edge, get faster. Taylor leads, Matty's laughter. NFL SuperCoach Halfa.
G'day Supercoaches and welcome back to the NFL SuperCoach Halfa with thanks to the Aussie Gridiron Network. It's episode 9 and big injuries plus the first wave of bye weeks are on the menu today as we work up our week 5 rosters. For those of you who don't remember me from the last time I was on the show, I'm Matty C, and here to open up this trapdoor and overcome the unknown is the most trustworthy voice in Australian NFL fantasy football across all persuasions. It's Taylor. How are you, mate?
Matty C is back after his disappearing act. After doing a solo pod, I'm now going to ask for more money on my next contract. And thank God I didn't say anything that we had to retract. Let's go.
I think you're much more likely to say things you need to retract when I'm there trying to drag it out of you. I think you're just much better behaved.
If anything, I probably pulled back a little bit when I was having the idea of having to host the podcast last week, but it was definitely something very, very different for me, Matty C. But definitely had a laugh with you on the side about the differences between doing a solo pod and obviously just being the color commentator and being sort of next to you on the podcast for the last 6 years. So very different. Felt like I was going to have a heart attack. I felt like my breathing was heavier than it's ever been before. I didn't have the ability to sort of take that time to relax and just sort of listen to someone else talk. So very, very different, but I was very happy that I was able to still get some content out to you super coaches, and hopefully it was well received, but I think we're all happy to have Matty C back on deck.
Thank you, mate. I'm very thankful for you going ahead and doing that, especially on the late notice. Thursday didn't go well, and then I was still not available Friday, and you just took it upon yourself, and I'm very grateful, and I know the super coaches out there too are, and you can tell that because they vote with their ears and they come and they spend the time. And we're just always so grateful every time we see anyone's listened to it because, we put the time and the effort in, and we do want to be a good resource for folks playing this brand new game. Mate, before we crack into it, big shout out to everyone filling our inbox too. Been just week in, week out, we just get tons of questions, and I don't want anyone to feel like that's a reason to stop either. Continue to send them in. You can hit us up on Aussie NFL Fantasy on the Instagram. You can go straight to @Taylor41 or straight to @Matty Podcast to ask questions as well. But you'll also find us anywhere that there's talk of SuperCoach on Facebook as well. Any group there, you're going to find Taylor in there as well. So feel free to seek us out and ask us questions. And mate, we've got 300 plus people in our Halfa SuperCoach League. It's going gangbusters, mate.
Oh, mate, it's absolutely phenomenal. And like I said, every single podcast I'm on here multiple times, I'm saying what a huge thank you. Massive thank you to obviously all you super coaches out there. Like the support you've given us has been amazing. With, like I said, it's only our 9th ever podcast. We sort of, came up with this on whim and, obviously just sort of created a run sheet. And we're always asking you guys for anything that will help you, because this is all this podcast is. It's not all about hearing my sultry, perfect voice, as Matty C. It's all about...
That's a lot of it. That's a huge part.
Helping the super coaches out there. But again, thank you so much. 300 plus people jumping into that league is phenomenal. And obviously we wanted to give you guys a very, very good prize for that, because we wanted to show our support to you for showing support to us. So hopefully that's a very, very good prize. And honestly, moving forward as NFL Supercoach gets even bigger and bigger and stronger year by year, I believe there is even a chance we could even have some bigger and better prizes moving forward. But thank you so much again, super coaches.
Yeah, and I mirror everything you said there, Tay. If you haven't joined the league, or people who are playing SuperCoach who haven't joined our league as well, get them in there. You may just be in danger of winning yourself some free shit, but also it's just kind of fun to be in groups with other people and seeing how they're building stuff. And that league code is 926635. You'll also find out on the show notes for this episode, wherever you got your podcast today. We're right in the top line. So make sure you join.
Just wanted to touch on the top five of the leaderboard of our group too, Matty C. There's been a little bit of fluctuations, but there's actually a couple of people that have been at the top last couple of weeks. So I'll just go through this quickly. But again, thank you everyone for jumping into that league. Coming first right now, the coach of the Haka Blitz is Ray. So he was in there last week. So well done to Ray, first place.
Kia ora, Ray, killing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So next we have Brady's Deflategate, coached by Shane. So that's a first entry into the top five for Shano. Well done, mate.
Well done, mate.
This name again that I'm sure I butchered last time. Steven, coached by Steven. He's back. He's back roaring into the top five. Missed him last. He's back in. Bijan Mustard, who entered the top five last week, is coached by Connor. And we have a new entrant into the top five, Waddle with a Chub, coached by Cam. So, again, another name that fits the podcast very, very well.
I love it. And excellent work. This is top five of a group of over 300 people. So we know that these are folks who are off to a red hot start. And it's really great to see that there's so much fun around the names that they're given their teams. It really does say, if anyone's caught our regular NFL fantasy show, these suit like nobody's business.
Absolutely. But like I touched on last week, it's still very early days in the season, guys. But congratulations to those five for doing so well so far. But if you're not in that top five, believe me, there's plenty of time left. And I've even seen from my own rankings and even yours, Matty, how much just 1 week can sort of change things so quickly. So, guys, don't give up. Even if you're sort of down towards the bottom end of the 300 players, do not give up, because there is so much season left to play and things can change very, very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and for all intents and purposes, we're 4 weeks in, right? That's a month of a 3.5 month season. So it is a long way still to run. There is a lot to consider, though, now, because we're in a position where this is where a new part of the season kicks in. We haven't had this to consider before. This week we've got 4 teams on a bye. And then the next 2 weeks after that, we have weeks where there are 2 teams on a bye in each of those. So there's a bit to prepare for. But also there's been some pretty significant players wind up with injuries or reasons that we may need to consider what we do with them on our roster. Tay, probably the biggest and unsurprising that it is the most traded out player in all of SuperCoach at the moment is Lamar Jackson, who's got injured last week and returned a lower score than you would hope because he left the game, but is now also out this week. Are you surprised to see SuperCoaches trading him out, and should they be?
I'm not. Basically, our mailbag exploded with questions about Lamar Jackson and basically what we're doing there. So to get stuck straight into him makes the most sense. Obviously, just to tick over 29 million, his break even's 76, but the break even's kind of irrelevant. It's more about whether he's going to be playing or not, and that's mainly why obviously people are trading him out, not so much that they believe he'll lose money. All reports is that it's looking more like a 2 or 3 week injury, and the fact is they have a bye in a couple of weeks, so I'd be super surprised if they weren't just to rest him for 2 weeks and then lead into that bye. The only caveat to that is they are 1-3, so I am wondering whether they actually have the ability to do that, because if they were, say, sit him this week and they lost to the Texans, they're 1-4, so it's not like they could sort of sit back and be, easy going with this injury, unless they really just decide that this isn't their year and they would just want to, think of the future with him. I personally am selling just because I think this is an opportunity for SuperCoach. I think, if anything, a lot of our teams are starting to look the same. I feel like we were kind of all, rocking a Josh Allen, Lamar sort of double up to quarterback, and obviously running one of those guys as our flexes. And I think this has actually blown SuperCoach wide open. I think there are so many different avenues you can take on this, whether it's, replacing him with a quarterback or replacing him with a running back that you don't have in your current running back stocks or wide receiver or whatever. I think this is actually going to create a situation that I think a lot of us SuperCoaches like, which is diversity in teams. So, yeah, I think this is actually super interesting. But just to sort of, touch back on the actual sell itself, I do believe he, for these next 2 or 3 weeks being without your $29 million man, I do think it is a good thing to sell. It's just obviously which direction you go.
I just can't imagine the world where even if Lamar Jackson was to play between now and that bye week, I felt like I was getting $29 million of my salary cap version of Lamar Jackson, which is why I'm selling as well. The great thing about when you sell the highest price player in SuperCoach is it gives you options. And I can't wait to see what some of the rosters of teams I'm going to play against this week will do with that new equity, since they'll just be flush with cash. This is going to be so fun to watch. And I just think, it's tough to imagine that world too, because while the Ravens have to start winning, right? It really is on a fulcrum that you either start winning straight away or your season may be gone. There's no point landing in the middle. So, do we see Lamar Jackson before the bye? Well, maybe. It would tell you a lot about their intent. But, gee, if you don't see him before the bye, do you even see him after the bye? So there's just so many reasons why I wonder why someone might want to hold on to him. I feel like the most prudent thing to do is to move on and take the cash and put it other places until you see it.
100%. And the fact is we're already sort of staring down the barrel of that week 8 or that situation, obviously, with Lamar and Josh Allen being on board together. So I think there is an opportunity to sort of get in front of that and just trade Lamar out now and then look to possibly purchase him back after. And then obviously that clears up things for us a little bit in that week because we've obviously, dealt with one of our problems already. So I just think the sell makes too much sense.
Now, some of these won't be as in-depth as that. That one, I feel like we really need to kick all the stones over because there's such heavy investment in him. He's such a lot of money and there's still a lot of questions around him. The next, at least 2 of the next 3, there's just no questions, right? Malik Nabers, rest in peace. He's not going to be back this season. We just hope he recovers well. You have to sell him. He's not coming back.
Yeah, absolute no-brainer, mate. We obviously got the word that, it's an ACL tear and, he definitely won't be back this year. So sell.
Yeah, at best, he could be back doing everything he did pre-injury in 9 months. There's no football season in 9 months, so that's it. Jamar Chase, gosh. Jake Browning has done pretty well everything he can as a defensive player to stop Jamar Chase being effective. Although the problem is he's actually a quarterback, so he shouldn't be trying to stop Jamar Chase from doing anything. At $19.91 million, now with a break even of 84. Tay, do you just have to get out of this before it gets ugly?
Yeah, Jake Browning's the current defensive player of the year, isn't he? He's doing an absolute number stopping Jamar Chase. I don't think it's all Browning's fault. The setup of this team. They basically went so top heavy on their contracts and who they were paying that they basically didn't worry about certain areas, and one of those areas is offensive line, and my God, it is just deplorable how bad that offensive line is. Chase Brown obviously can't get anything going in the running game, but they are so bad at pass protection that they basically send 4 guys to defend 1 and let the other 3 free. I don't know if anyone caught that picture, but it is honestly laughable how bad this offensive line is at the moment, and it just cannot protect Browning at all, and he just can't get any deep shots down to Jamar Chase. So for anyone, like I know you, Matty C, sold him 2 weeks ago, which was a great move. I got in front of it and sold him last week just because I didn't like what I was seeing from that O-line and Browning. Obviously moved to Puka, and now Puka's gone up $2 million extra, which obviously turned out to be a very good move. If you haven't sold him already, I would. The break-even's 84. You're going to hemorrhage money. And the fact is, I just don't even see him as a top 10 option moving forward. He's still a very good wide receiver, but his situation is just brutal, and that's all fantasy is. So just get out, guys. Get out now if you haven't already.
Yeah, you bought him to be the number 1, and whether he finishes number 1 or not, you need him to finish in the top 5 probably to keep his money to be a worthwhile keeper. He can't do that anymore. He might be a top 15 receiver, and that just erodes your cash. Got to get out of him. There's no questions on this one either. I've never seen a bloke so happy to never have to play another snap this season. It was Tyreek Hill who really mangled his leg in that tackle. We all sort of looked at him and went, oh, God, ankle. Turns out it's his knee. He dislocated his knee, and he might not even be back next year. That's a massive injury to overcome. And we may have seen the last of the best of Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, it looked bloody gross, to be honest. I was thinking it actually might have been some kind of leg fracture or something like that. But, yeah, obviously turned out to be a whole bunch of different ligaments in the kneecap. It was just he did a very, very good job on it, to be honest. So
it's a grocery list of things.
Yeah, look, he's an obvious sell. I've got him in my team, and I'll talk about my trades later. To sort of avoid using a boost, I'm probably just going to sit him on my bench for one more week. That obviously isn't to eventually try and play him or anything. It's just more that the wide receiver landscape's a bit funny at the moment, and there's just a few guys have got question marks on that people are buying, and most of the guys that I'm pretty confident in I already have. So I've got enough coverage to sort of hold him for a week inside, not forcing myself into using a boost. But in general, like, he's the perfect guy to just sell if you need to get up to someone else, or if you're just trying to make money or whatever. But obviously he's not going to be playing football at all the rest of the season. So yeah, get out definitely, whether it's this week or next week.
Hard to know when he'll be back either, so you just got to get rid of him. And one thing that's, I guess, really clean about this, though, is that, you haven't lost money on him. He's pretty well sat around what he cost you in the first place. So he hasn't hurt you, but you do have that benefit of just being able to stick him on your bench, knowing that if you've got other priorities where you just need to, your trade priorities point you in a different direction, it won't hurt you to sit him on the bench because he can't hurt you. Mate, CeeDee Lamb is in a similar boat where he is injured, but he will be back. Those who didn't get out from under him last week or who are just trying to bench him to hold on, I definitely understand because there are other trade priorities potentially out there. Do you understand why people would be selling CeeDee Lamb?
So I have a little bit of a different tune this week than I did last week. Last week, I was more than happy to sell. Just like me personally, I did sell with the idea that I would get him back later because he's at that price that I felt like it was still pretty easy to shift some of these mid-ranges over to him. So I still believe that that's the case, but I do feel like he isn't on the IR, so it seems to me like it's the kind of injury that might only be 1 or 2 more weeks. So I think it held this far. Look, if you've got Tyreek Hill in there, obviously you can shift him before you can shift Lamb because Lamb's obviously coming back. It just obviously depends on your team makeup, but I was a far bigger fan of selling him last week because I felt like I was pretty much guaranteed that I was getting the next 2 weeks where he wasn't there, and then that would give me time to sort of work out the funds and work out the rest of my team to get him back. But now that it's just getting closer to that return, I'm not sold that it's really the right move. If it's your only avenue to get like Puka or Amon-Ra or someone that's just an absolute flat out gun that you have to have, I can understand it now, but I don't know. I'm more on the side of possibly holding now that it's obviously a week closer to his return.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I did. I moved him out last week to get into the Puka Nacua game. Clearly that was a good move because he goes and throws up 59 points, which is absurd for a wide receiver. It's an amazing game. So I can understand if that's the move. And when you look at the trade-ins, then there's plenty of great candidates in that list as to why you would be keen to sell CeeDee Lamb. The way I've heard a high ankle sprain described for a wide receiver too is either it's a fairly mild sprain and you can almost play on it straight away, or it's more significant and it's 3 weeks before you play again and you probably don't completely heal from it till the 6th week. I'm leaning on this being we'll see CD back after he's sat out the 3rd game. He'll be back on the 4th week.
Yep. Yeah, that's fine. Which, again, I'm not full. If you told me right now you're selling him, I wouldn't say you'd make it a terrible decision because there are other buyers like you mentioned. It's just less of a slam dunk to sell now, given that obviously it's, when he's coming back is going to be within that 4 weeks and you've already lost it. So it's like, you've kind of waited on a week too long, in my opinion. It kind of leans towards holding. But if it's your only avenue, I've got no problem.
Yeah, I made my deal with that when I decided to keep Mike Evans instead. So I've just got the same problem with in a different bottle, mate. So, mate, Travis Hunter, I wonder how you would talk about this one because you were pretty ardent in the preseason that maybe Travis Hunter wasn't the greatest young player to pick up and stick into your roster. He hasn't made a ton of people any money. And he really hasn't sort of shown he's got a big role in offense that would generate you the points to get the money that you would need for him to be a good investment. People are selling him. Feel like he kind of gave the cautionary tale about 5 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, I've been giving a cautionary tale, it feels like this entire season, Matty C. I just didn't like his role. I never believed that it was going to be fantasy relevant in year one. I felt there were a lot of other very good buys around his value, and I still believe that. So the problem is at that price, I just still struggle to understand who people are selling him to. I don't know if it's people that, had a bit of cash in their bank already and they're also now downgrading Lamar to someone else and they've sort of just been flush with money for another 10 or so million. If that's the case, I've got no problem people sort of upgrading him, into those sort of middle grounds, your Quinton Johnsons, your George Pickens and stuff like that. I've got no problem with people doing that, especially if they need a starter this week. But honestly, at that price, I've talked about it before. Like he's not losing money. He's kind of just going to stay the course. I don't see amazingly better days for him moving forward. But I still also have this feeling that in 2 or 3 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another low price wide receiver that all of a sudden's a buy, and you could possibly just shift into them then. It's just very dependent on your team. But again, I've got no problem with people selling him if it's the only avenue again. But at the same time, I also don't really mind if people just sit a $4 million guy on their bench because they're not really hurting them either. It's very much, how much coverage do you have at wide receiver? It could also become an issue at a buy time, when Buy-Mageddon happens in week 8. I understand people selling then because you need that coverage. But at the moment, I don't feel like we're really pressed too hard for coverage.
Yeah. I don't know if I can add anything to that either, given that you gave the warnings early on and we were talking about how every snap he plays on defense, it really takes away a snap he could have played on offense where he's going to have the opportunity and the window to score you SuperCoach points. Nothing he does on defense is going to score you SuperCoach points for Travis Hunter. It might for the Jaguars defense, but the amount of teams out there who are starting the Jaguars defense that aren't named Matty C is, I think, pretty low. The last couple of guys on this, I understand why people are doing this, Tay. He was the highest priced tight end in all of fantasy, Brock Bowers, and he's just lost your money left and right. People are getting out of him. Do you think that's wise?
Yeah, this is a funny one to me because I know the talent. It was there on show last season, and obviously a lot of NFL super coaches might not be well versed on what Brock Bowers actually did last year. And Harry, look, they're kind of just looking at the numbers and taking it for this one season sample size. I agree. We've had buddy questions left, right, and center about is Geno completely ruining this guy, and what's it look like? I kind of more worried about Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator. He seems to be the one that's kind of changing this offense and making questionable decisions. So I have got concern there. The problem for me is he's already lost, $3 and a bit million. He's sort of around 11. I just don't know if there's enough value at tight end to be doing this. Like, I understand there are some buys that are a little bit lower that, might get similar score. Similar scores out of these guys than you've got out of Bowers so far. I don't know. I just feel I can see myself seeing Bowers as a buy again later in the year, and I'm like, if he loses 1.5 million till that time in the process, I kind of don't really see the point of selling. Like, I still believe in the talent. I still believe things are going to turn around. He's obviously coming back from an injury that he had earlier in the season. If I had him, I'd just be staying the course and I'd be finding a different way to make money. We're also all selling Lamar, I believe. We are. We just talked about the most sold player, and it's Lamar. Do we really need the money that bad? Do we really need to be downgrading? I assume maybe it's to like a Darren Waller or something, but I don't know. I don't think we need the money that horrendously. So I'm personally holding Bowers if I could.
And I kind of wonder what's his worst case scenario. I feel like he's living it at the moment where he's scoring your points, but not as many as you want. And his break even's 14. So he's doing that. He's not likely to just hemorrhage money. So yeah, I'm pretty fine to stay with him. And the options out there are not better for tight end. To me, you're kind of burning a trade on something that will otherwise just be fine. Just be fine. Every star player can have a couple of down weeks. It'll be okay. So I've seen that as a great big non-action point.
I implore people to realise that tight end is just a really, really barren position in fantasy. It's just not everyone's Tyler Warren that seems to be just ticking along and making us money. You're not just going to get that easily. Honestly, every single time you think you've got tight end figured out, it turns around and whips you in the arsehole next week. It is just not an easy position to work out. And you're not going to get consistency out of that position. I know we all thought we would out of Trey McBride and Bowers and stuff like that. I know McBride's been better than Bowers, but I still don't look at this like, I believe that, those two are just so different from each other moving forward. And no one's obviously out there thinking about, dropping McBride. So I just think you've lost your money on Bowers already, and I don't see it dropping an absurd amount more. I think you got to stay the course and things will turn around. And then, like I said, I believe there's going to be a time when everyone's trying to buy Bowers. So just get in front of that and hold him.
Yeah, stay in the flames. Last one on this list we want to talk about, and I remember sitting here 2 weeks ago being like, hey, Tay, why are people buying so much Derrick Henry? Now people are selling a lot of Derrick Henry. Do you think that was just people being a bit eager to get him in after he had that big game in week 2 and just trying to chase the points?
That, again, this is something I talked about, and I was lucky enough, when we did that week 2 podcast, and I obviously brought up that the first score drops out of the 3-round average super quick, and for people not to overreact to week 1 scores. That generally has been some of my better advice, because there's been other guys like Zay Flowers, Keon Coleman, stuff like that did the same thing. And we're already seeing people like fire selling these guys because they're so worried because all of a sudden these break evens have changed. Derrick Henry's a bit of a tough one because you've kind of already lost a decent chunk of money on him. He's down to 17.26 million. He's got a break even at 58. I am concerned, obviously, with Lamar out. Yes, there is a chance that Derrick Henry gets more work, but there is also a chance this team's down, and that has never been Derrick Henry's MO. Like, even when he was at the Titans, the only times you would see down games from him is when the team's down, because he is not much of a pass catcher, and generally what happens is you see Justice Hill, the backup running back, he's a far better pass catcher, and he's used on those downs where they are basically in passing mode. So that's my concern for Derrick Henry. The problem is, too, there are so many good buys at running back that I don't actually really have a problem with people shifting him. I know that sounds crazy because he is a stud, and there is obviously, like I said, with Bowers, probably going to be moments where we want to buy Henry if it's a good matchup or something like that. But if you're a guy that, doesn't have Jahmyr Gibbs, doesn't have Jonathan Taylor, doesn't have all these guys, I can see the validity of actually selling over to him and just kind of, especially while Lamar's not there and you're worried about the offense. So I actually don't hate the sell, but it's another one. It sounds fence city again, but if you want to stick with it, I've got no problem either, because he is a gun and things could turn around. But there is just it's not like tight end that I talked about with Bowers. There is amazing pickups at running back, so obviously it's very team dependent. Obviously even your Genties and your Omarion Hamptons and stuff like that are even popping off as budget players as well. So we've all got options we want to play there. So I've got no problem if you want to shift to another gun, but if you just want to stay the course on Derrick Henry and just be happy maybe dropping another couple of million, I've got no problem either.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put a bow on the most traded out players by super coaches, because he's definitely going to be a polarizing one. That offense is yet to be determined what that's going to look like for the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So a lot of questions there, and I can understand why people are a little bit like a cat on a hot tin roof and may want to get out of the fry pan with him there. But we'll shift gears. Let's talk about the folks that people are bringing in. Mate, it starts with wide receivers and quarterbacks, and it pretty much stays with wide receivers and quarterbacks. It is the huge part of what's going on here this week is the changes there. No more so than after an electric Sunday night game, George Pickens is the most traded in by super coaches at $14.58 million. Do you reckon that's a wise call?
Man, this guy saved my ass in two regular NFL fantasy leagues. I had a couple that I was down on projections, and I thought, George Pickens is my man. He's the kind of guy that could score you 0 or 50, and that's what I need, because I don't care if I lose by 30. I need someone that's got the high ceiling. So I plugged him in, and man, was it amazing. So thank you for that, George. In terms of buying him, look, minus 11 break even, 14.5 million. Look, you can't really hate on those statistics. Like that's a buy in anyone's book if you're just looking at it that. My concern is CD Lamb's not very far away. Like if he's back in the next 1 to 2 weeks, then George just goes back to his wide receiver 2 role, which, to be honest, I still think is fine. Like, I drafted a lot of George Pickens this year knowing that he was going to be the wide receiver 2. So I'm not saying he doesn't have any value at that spot, but this is very much buying last week's points, chasing them. I think people aren't like kind of realizing that this isn't going to be the norm for George Pickens. He's not going to be the wide receiver one moving forward when CD's back. So it's a very short-term play. And the fact is we're going to need some of these trades for these bye weeks in terms of like bringing people in at the right time. And I just don't think we should be using trades on George Pickens for like a 2-week play to then trade him out again if he makes $1 or $2 million. I don't think we need the money that bad. So I'm personally not buying George, but obviously that was a very, very good game by him last week. So kudos.
Super tempting, isn't it? But for me, it's that awkward price too of like 14.5 million. Mate, I don't know why I would be trading at that sort of level because he's not a gun and he doesn't have the future of being a gun unless CD's just out forever. That's not the case. And he's also not like one of those value guys who's just got nothing but ceiling. He's kind of, I'm so agnostic. So, he hasn't been on my radar. I understand why he's on people's radars, but I don't know that in good conscience I would recommend people do it. So I don't love that people are trading him at the rate they are. I do understand, like any other circumstance, you go, well, this guy's a buy, but just with the limited nature of it, and I just don't know how to manage trades through the upcoming bye weeks, plus whatever injuries are still yet to show themselves, that you can go wasting trades like this. And I'm calling it waste. Maybe that's a rough word to use, given that I'm not some oracle who's seeing down the future, but I just kind of feel like we need to be more cautious.
No, for sure. And I hope this is what knowledge people take out of this, because if you're someone that hasn't done a lot of sort of NFL fantasy play, but you've done a lot of SuperCoach, I can understand why he's the most traded in because of just the numbers purely. Like if you're just taking the actual gameplay out of this, I can see why people look at this and go, well, minus 11 break even, he's going to make money. He just had an amazing score. That score is going to stay in his 3-round average for 2 weeks. I get that side of it, but you have to actually look at everything, take a full scope of everything. And the fact is that he's going to be wide receiver 2 in a couple of weeks when CD's back. He, like you said, he isn't really a keeper. He's not a gun that's just going to be super consistent. Like I just brought up, he's the kind of guy who gets 0 or 50. He's very erratic. So I just, like you said, I just think this is one where you've got to actually look at the situation, not just the money he's going to make.
I mean, that's his high watermark. He's not going to have a game like that again this season. And I will put it on my stone. It's not going to happen. So to me, it is very, you're sort of chasing them. It's already happened, and there's no upside to it. Mate, the guy who had a similar great week at wide receiver is this is someone who I can see this coming from again. If you told me there was another week where Puka Nacua threw up 36 points in regular NFL fantasy, threw up a 59-point SuperCoach day, I'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, it just wouldn't shock me because his game is completely opposite. He is very needed in that offense. His range is in those short routes that he can then do extra with his legs. He doesn't score a ton of touchdowns, so when he does, it's a bonus. You love that. I could buy this going forward from Puka, and I got into him when I got rid of Jamar Chase a couple of weeks ago. It was a good trade, and I don't mind that people are still coming to this party. I think it's the right call.
I think we just tie in the next two together, Matty. I've kind of been doing this a lot. I just think Puka Nacua and Amon-Ra St. Brown are just very similar. Like they're guys that just have consistent volume. I even brought it up in the wide receiver show before the season started. I felt like they were just going to be super consistent SuperCoach players. Like they just demand a certain percentage of the passing attack in their teams. And yes, to a degree, like Amon-Ra has actually been amazing with touchdowns so far, but that hasn't all his MO. So I guess you could say there's technically a reason for downtick based off what he's done so far. But the fact is there's not enough. Like, let's just say neither of these guys score a touchdown in the next 3 weeks. There's a pretty good chance they've both had bloody 8 to 10 catches in those games, and they've probably both got 90 to 110 yards. Like, it's like their bad games are still going to be amazing compared to other, wide receivers that you could possibly that you have already if you don't have these guys, or someone else that you would look to move to. They're just so ultra consistent that you're going to get like 32 points on their bad days and probably like mid 60s on their good ones. It's like they are just the epitome of these two are just wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 of a bullet in honestly regular NFL fantasy and SuperCoach. So if you don't have either of them, get both. If you don't have the other one, get the other one, because these two are just locked and loaded for the rest of the season. They're just both in great offenses. They're both very trusted by their either offensive coordinator or their head coach. It's just all guns blazing for these two.
And the only thing I wanted to add here, Tay, is that, I hear you talk about players in NRL Supercoach, where I'm very much a student of watching what you do there, where you talk about players who've got good base stats. Catches and yards for a wide receiver are your base stats. The touchdown is always going to be like the try. It's a nice piece of icing. You want them. You can never rely on them. Touchdowns are fluky, but receiving targets and then turning those targets into catches and turning those catches into yards, they are not as fluky. They are earned and they are something that when you see a player who can consistently do it, then that is just the absolute epitome of what you're hoping for, because every time they catch one and take it for yards, it does give them more opportunity for touchdowns, but it also means they're not dependent on it. They're not like a tight end who might catch 3 balls all day and you're desperate for one of them to be the touchdown. These guys they operate in a realm where that is icing, not cake. Like their stats are the cake and the touchdown is the icing.
Yep, 100%. It's been hard to find the same correlation between base stats and NFL, because obviously you've got to rely on your quarterback throwing to you, whereas in the NRL you can basically walk up and grab the ball and run with it and obviously make tackles. But, with this situation, these two are the closest thing you could possibly get to having base stats, because they are just targeted so often and have such a good baseline of catches. So for any, NRL super coaches that obviously love their base stats and try and fill their center wings with, second rowers that you can play there because they love the base stats with upside, these guys are it to a T. They are base stats with upside. They're just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, you have to stump up for them. They're not like they're guys that you can just kind of find who will have those weeks where they'll score a couple of tries a couple of weeks in a row and just really boost you along. But these guys, I mean, yeah, I got Amon-Ra in early and I've had to go back and fund Puka later. And yeah, if you don't have both, you have to have both. No matter what version of them you have, you just have to make sure by the time you finish your priority trades, they're both in your lineup. I've got a question for you, Tay. Is Patrick Mahomes good again?
Mate, I was asking myself the exact same thing when I watched the end of that Ravens game. Look, it's something we'll probably need to dissect right now.
I mean, are the Ravens just bad? That's the other thing, because we've seen other quarterbacks put up points against the Ravens. Do I believe that Patrick Mahomes is quite good? Because we've seen him now. He's the 4th most bought Supercoach player this week in terms of trading him in. He comes at a cost of $22.5 million, which is barely different from what he was at the start of the year. So, when I say, is he good again? Well, is he what we were hoping for based on the cost from his stats last year? He hasn't sort of done anything to wow me and make me go, gee, I feel like I'm missing out. Is it worthwhile trading in a guy who's pretty much doing what the money demanded of him?
Yeah, look, it's not for me. I've had a lot of questions sort of in my messenger group about this. And the way I looked at it is, if you're a numbers nerd and you want to sort of take things for that side of it, yes, he had an amazing game last week. But what did he do, I don't know, the previous 25 games before that? The fact is, yes, he had a bit of a breakout game last week. The Ravens defense is 100% a huge reason for that. They are getting absolutely torched, whether it's on the ground, in the air, everywhere. They are just losing players left, right, and center on that defense. So they are definitely a defense to actually target moving forward for fantasy. So this could have just been a mirage game, honestly, from Pat Mahomes. It was obviously good to see the Chiefs offense actually do something and actually try and pound a team instead of just trying to win these crappy 3-point games where they win in low scoring games. So that was good to see. But the problem is, because of what I have seen out of Pat Mahomes for 2+ years, I need to see it for more than 1 week. I'm not jumping on board and taking this, if it was, I don't know, against a superb defense, I might have stood up and gone, hell, well, if they're going to do that against these guys, then maybe I need to start taking note. But the fact is, I think there's going to be a lot of teams that have big games against this Ravens defense. So, yeah, I'm not taking it for, a 1 week sample size. I'm waiting it out. He's also got a break even of 39. So it's not like he's going to just jump cash if you miss out on another, good week. So I'm personally waiting it out for another week. I still don't think he's going to be one that I'm going to look at to buy. But if you are looking at him, and obviously you're looking to trade Lamar, so I can see why people are sort of thinking that Pat Mahomes is the next best quarterback that they want to jump on. The fact is, I don't even believe that. You've got guys like Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels coming back off the injury. I just think those guys, honestly, over a year-long sample size are going to be better than Patrick Mahomes anyway. So I just don't see it myself. The sample size of 2 years of bad fantasy play for this offense isn't going to just be trumped, in 1 week. I will say he's getting healthier receivers. He obviously had Rashee Rice. He obviously had Xavier Worthy come back. He's got Rashee Rice coming back in a couple of weeks. So there is reason for optimism, but I need to see it.
Yeah. I don't believe that Patrick Mahomes is the player you pull in, no matter what your situation was. If you've just lost Lamar Jackson, then you probably need to bring in a Jaden Daniels or a Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the next guy on the list. I can see why you might not have had either of those guys, because you might have been rolling with the other one plus Lamar Jackson, or one of them plus, so maybe Jalen Hurts. I understand how those top handful are kind of interchangeable. They were kind of like Lego. But now that you've had one taken away from you for an indefinite period, we always knew that Daniels was going to be back pretty soon. You probably need to have Josh Allen, and you probably need to start considering making him your captain.
Oh, for sure. And the fact is, if we're losing Lamar and we're kind of losing that, obvious captain option, it makes it even more important to have Josh Allen. You sort of hit the nail on the head there. I've talked to people about the possibility, and I'm sure we'll get that to this when we talk about our trades, but I've looked at the possibility of not even having an extra quarterback. I've looked at possibly just downgrading Lamar to a running back. And the fact is, I'm more comfortable with that because I have Josh Allen, because I have that locked in captaincy option that seems to be getting anywhere between 40 and 60 every single week. So that makes me more comfortable doing that. So if you don't have Josh Allen, please go and get him, because it's never been more important. People obviously must have been rocking a Lamar but no Josh Allen team must be doing this. That's a perfect, obviously, trade over. You guys have the easiest decision of all time. It's us guys that already have Josh Allen and Lamar that obviously have a bit of a tougher time working out, who to move to. But yeah, if you don't have Josh Allen, get him now.
Yeah. He's everything a gun quarterback should be. He's the most solid asset in all of fantasy, I think, at the moment. Quentin Johnston is next on our list. I love this guy, Tay. We've been watching him for a couple of years in the NFL, and we've ridden the Quentin Johnston roller coaster in NFL fantasy football. This year, he kind of really looks like he's grown up. He looks like a real man out there playing against real men and making real big man catches. He's currently at $14.8 million with a break-even of 16. To have people bringing him to their lineup, though, what do you think people have got to be replacing? Is this the CD Lamb replacement?
Yeah, look, it's one it's been super hard for me to trust, because he's kind of like Patrick Mahomes in another way if Patrick Mahomes had no hands or dicks for fingers. He hasn't been able to catch anything. He would have been fine during COVID because he could have walked straight to the streets and not caught it.
I heard he was licking people through COVID trying to catch it, but he still couldn't catch it. That is how bad he was at catching.
Yeah, he was trying to fit in, but he couldn't catch anything. But he had two of the worst years you have ever seen to start his career. He was completely punted to the side. So even, obviously, super coaches that are sort of just starting this year and seeing his scores early on, I'm certain you would have heard me on this podcast and wondered why I was less willing to actually just accept that this guy is good. It's because of what I've seen in the previous years. He just had never been consistent. And anytime you thought he was going to take off, he'd just have a game where he'd drop 3 sitters and then he'd be benched again. It was just 2 terrible years. So you can see why us sort of fantasy veterans just needed to see it for longer periods of time. But I'm with you. I'm really starting to believe that this guy actually just could be the wide receiver one on this team. He kind of he fits the wide receiver one mold a bit better than Keenan Allen at this point of his career, and even Ladd McConkey. He's just got all the tools for a wide receiver one, the size, the speed. And I think it's all coming together for him this year. So I've got actually no problem with people doing it. The price tag's obviously gone up a bit. And I've even weirdly had these 2 leagues that I have in regular NFL fantasy where I haven't even started him once. This is just proving again that I've been so wary to just anoint this guy being as good as obviously the stats he's getting. And I think I need to finally start making that decision that this guy actually is just good. So, yeah, I'm fine with people doing it. I think for CD Lamb, I would probably still hold CD.
I would too, but I'm just trying to work out what are people leaving to come into him, you know?
Yes, Tyreek Hill up to him. I don't
Maybe
have a problem with that.
Maybe DJ Moore?
I think if you're looking at Quentin Johnson and Pickens together, they're obviously around the same price. I think I actually would take Johnson. I think there's a chance that Johnson's just the wide receiver one moving forward in this team.
Excellent point.
No chance of that.
Excellent point.
Pickens because of CeeDee Lamb. So if you're looking at those two, I probably would lean Quentin Johnson. But yeah, it's obviously very team specific into who you're trading from.
Yeah. Gee, in fact, in almost any instance, if you told me I could choose between Pickens and Quentin Johnson rest of season in pretty well any format of fantasy, whether it's Halfa, like the SuperCoach here, or whether it's regular fantasy, or whether it's even Dynasty, if you want to be a real degenerate like we are, in all those instances, I think I would say Quentin Johnson. In best ball, I would say Quentin Johnson. I just can't think of one where I would say Pickens over Johnston. So if that isn't a bulletproof like recommendation that the longevity of Johnston is much more trustworthy than Pickens, I don't know what is.
Yep, no, for sure, mate.
Mate, I've got two more to go, and these ones are super interesting for different reasons. One is a fellow who retired, went off to hit the music career, just like we see all these people who leave Nabers and Home and Away do, but now he's back. That never happens to the people who leave Home and Away and Nabers, mate. Once they're gone, they're out. Darren Waller's back with 2 touchdowns this week, and he's only 3.7 million with a break even of minus 60,000. Well, not quite, minus 19, which is amazing. Do we just throw whatever we've got on our bench or guys who we thought would make us money to go and pick up Darren Waller? Do we just blindly do it?
Yeah, look, you don't need to blindly do it this week because he's only played one game. So he's that break even of minus 19, I'm going to revert back to my week 2 takes is obviously only going to stay in his 3-round average. Sorry, his score from this week's only going to stay in his 3-round average for 1 week when he starts to make money. So obviously if he has a couple of sort of average games from now, his break-even's going to go up pretty quickly. But in the end, he is bottom dollar, 3.7 million. I actually personally am making this trade, but my specific situation is because I'm a David Njoku owner. I kind of have held him through these first 3 or 4 weeks thinking things might get better with Joe Flacco, and it just never eventuated. So that's an obvious downgrade for me to make $6 million from a guy that I don't trust starting anyway in Njoku. So I think that trade makes way more sense than people looking at like Bowers down to him, because I still believe that there are far better days moving forward for Brock Bowers. So it's just very dependent on who you're trading him from, because if it's just a guy that's low priced and isn't moving in terms of dollar value, you can wait a week on Waller anyway. He's not moving in price. He's going to be probably one of the more traded in guys next week. So just wait it out, because if you bring him in this week and he, hurts himself, then you've kind of wasted a trade. So just wait it out. Wait 1 week, because it's not going to hurt you waiting.
Yeah, it does sound like a very specific situation you've got there, Tay, is a reason why that's really appealing for you. I can't imagine that's really true for terribly many people. I think Njoku was only being owned in something like 2% of leagues, may not even been that many actually. That is a so niche situation. I can't imagine you doing this for a guy like Hawkinson, who's still playing and doing not what you hoped, but he's not losing you money. Or Bowers, who is losing you some money but has a better situation. I just can't imagine what it would take outside of a situation like you've got. So patience, I guess. We'll check it out next weck and see what SuperCoach is doing there. The last one, though, I'm so interested in this one because Jackson Dart got his first start for the New York Giants after the week before we saw Cam Scatterbo just tear it up, and now all of a sudden the Giants look fun. But what does that mean for SuperCoaches, Tay? Jackson Dart goes out there and plays a real grown-ups game, and now his break-even's minus 2 million, or minus 22. How much of the Darren Waller situation is also copy-paste for this?
Yeah, it pretty much is the same. I think we have a mailbag question later that's kind of, got one specific reason that you could go this route. And it kind of involves, changing like JJ McCarthy over to him and holding Lamar through it, just so you've actually got a quarterback, into your flex. But again, he's one that's not going to go up money. He's got a break even of minus 22, but that doesn't really become relevant till next week. I don't like bringing in these guys a week early unless I really have to. Like you said, that super niche specific situation situation with Njoku down to Waller, it makes sense for me. I still will touch it on the mailbag, but I'm not sure I even like that scenario. Of going to Dart, say, from McCarthy. It just seems like super sideways, and I still think McCarthy isn't too far away from coming back. So, yeah, it's one that obviously keep an eye on. He obviously had an amazing week one. He ran the ball a lot. There is also a chance that, teams might get a bit more tape on him moving forward, and he only threw for just over 100 yards. So there is obviously the question mark of, his floor. Like, he could actually have some super low games as a rookie. So, yeah, I'm just not super interested on jumping on him right now. I need to see more.
Yeah, and to me, I think he'll be an absolute yo-yo. He'll have those weeks where he does get a lot done with his legs, plus he throws a touchdown and pulls his score along. But then he'll just have a week where he doesn't do either of those things well, because he's new and he's on a shite team. So there's a reason somebody in front of him just got fired. It's going to be very up and down. I'd be really nervous about it, where I feel like McCarthy's situation is much more clear. So I'm of the opinion that if you've done the McCarthy thing, do not burn a trade shifting sideways to Jackson Dart. Let somebody else have that heart attack. That's
Absolutely.
There's plenty of other things in our lives that can give us heart attack, gents. Let's not make Jackson Dart one of them. But one thing that helps with heart attacks in a way is if you're a player and you get a bye week. We've got a bye week in the local gridiron here, so I've got a week off the commentary there and the players get a chance to rest. But, for us as the casual fans who really love the sport, we miss the players. And for us in fantasy, it can give us all kinds of palpitations about how we navigate it. From here, we're going to have at least 2 teams on a bye every week for, the next sort of 6 or 7 weeks. But mate, this week we get off to it with a vengeance. There are 4 teams who aren't suiting up this week. That's panic stations for some people, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to touch on this super quick because the SuperCoach will become SuperCoach half a day if we don't get through these last couple of segments.
We are up against it, yeah.
It's more, I didn't want to go into super analysis about this. I just wanted to point it out who is on the bye for the next, say, 3 weeks and just say whether I think it's actionable. Obviously, the guys that are on bye this week, there's not really much we can do about it. They're already in our teams. I don't believe you should just be trading them out unless there's actual reason to outside of the bye, whether it's like high break even or better play put in. I just think with all the injuries, we shouldn't be just getting rid of these guys. So you got the Falcons, Bears, Packers, and Steelers. Obviously, some relevant guys in there. But I do believe, I've even noticed in my own team, there is definitely a good coverage on our benches. So I don't think you should be doing anything super actionable about the players that are already on bye. I'm personally not getting rid of anyone that's on bye. So I've just got a few of those guys obviously just sitting on my bench this week. Next week is the Texans and Vikings. So I guess the only actionable thing for this is if you're considering bringing in a Nico Collins or a Justin Jefferson or just anyone obviously in those teams, just have a think about whether you really need them this week because obviously they're on bye next week. So you can kind of wait that 2 weeks and then buy them after their bye if you really, really need them. The week after, obviously, we've talked about Bills and Ravens, week 7. That was going to be, a pretty bad situation for us holding both those quarterbacks. But I think that's obviously sort of factors into my decision that I will sell Lamar because it feels like his hamstring issue probably will coincide with that bye ending. And then obviously there's opportunity to possibly buy him back in week 8. And then week 8 is actually the most brutal one. But I personally think it's just a little bit too far away to do anything actionable yet. You've got the Lions, the Raiders, the Rams, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, and the Jags. So 6 teams are in bye on week 8. So yes, it is going to be an issue because obviously it's going to really, really test our depth at certain positions. But I don't think it's actionable right now. Yes, it might be something you talk about next week, definitely in week 7. But I just don't think there's really anything you can do right now because you don't want to be costing yourself points in the lead up to that week to then have to try and get those points back by making trades. So I don't think it's anything we can do about it right now.
Let's move into the mailbag. This is actually my favourite part of the show every week is where we get to talk about what real-life situations are happening for our super coaches. And the first one has come in from Cade Upton, and he wants to know, what do you do with Bowers. We talked about him briefly before, but he caveats it with Gino is killing him.
Yeah, look, some of these questions obviously are probably stuff we've touched on already in the episode. It's obviously just super important stuff that's happening. I am a firm believer in holding Bowers. I know a lot of people are sort of jumping off rooftops at the moment, but the fact is the tight end position just doesn't have all these amazing guys that are going to all of a sudden kickstart your year and give you a lot more points. I think you've lost the $3 million or so on Brock Bowers. He's getting healthier, not going the other direction. I do think they're going to obviously realise eventually that Brock Bowers is their best asset in the passing game, like they realised last year, and they're going to start using him more. So I implore people, if they've got Bowers in the tight end landscape, it's just not worth selling him because there's just no obvious guaranteed buy that's going to kill it for you week to week. So I would hold him.
You probably made that $3 or $4 million on Ted McMillan or someone like that. So just call it a wash. Just don't focus it on Bowers himself being a loss. Just realise that it takes your entire team, and he will have his weeks where he contributes. Next one's here from Stephen Prout. He says, to trade or not to trade Lamar and the replacements for him. Gosh, mate, this has been the biggest touch point all week. What do you do with Lamar?
Yeah, and it opens up a lot of different directions. Like, I'll just touch on my own plan.
Please.
I'm looking to trade him to Jahmyr Gibbs, so I'm not actually looking to replace him with a quarterback. Going to a running back also gives you more flexibility in that flex position, because when you lock it up with a quarterback, you actually can't really move from that position. Whereas when I put a running back in there, I can actually have different options in terms of my trades, and I have a bit more maneuverability to change around my team. So the fact that I'm not a Gibbs owner worries me, especially in this matchup against the Bengals this week. I know Gibbs isn't going to lose money, so it's not like I'm bringing in a guy to then have worries later trying to bring in Lamar. Yeah. I do believe that Gibbs is a keeper, and my plan is to bring in Gibbs and then shift him to running back and then possibly sell a different running back to Lamar in about 3 weeks. So that's actually one way I'm looking at. If you really, really want to go the quarterback route, I still think guys like Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels maybe to a degree. I'm still a little bit worried about him coming off an injury, but I still think those guys sort of are in that top 4 at quarterback for a reason. So they're the guys I'm more looking at. If you're looking for a very short-term play, I actually don't even hate Justin Fields, and it's more about his matchups. Like, he's got an insane matchup against the Cowboys, who are last against the this week. He's also got some very, very good matchups coming up. He's got the Panthers in the next couple of weeks. He's got the Bengals after that. He's got the Broncos in between that, which is not a great matchup, but in the end, they've got 3 out of 4 very good matchups. That's the kind of range of matchups you're looking for to then obviously buy Lamar back. So that's just a bit of a left field one, but I'm still looking at that like Daniels Hurts range, or looking at going complete elsewhere, like I've already mentioned I'm doing, and I'm sort of shoring up, like a running back that I don't currently have, even maybe like a Jonathan Taylor, because I don't have him either. But for anyone who wants to take a shot on him, who obviously is the running back 1, or basically him and James Cook are the running back 1 and 2 at the moment. James Cook's even another, direction you could even go.
Throw him in there.
I just think there's so many different ways you can go. So I've got no problem with really any of those, but I'm personally taking a running back and taking the awesome matchup for this week.
Yeah. Well, and I think this dovetails nicely. I've got one here from Tim O'Donnell, who specifically talks about a situation where you've kind of lent in some directions that might actually help him. I'll read his question in full, though. He says, those of us currently running the Jackson and Allen situation with the news of Jackson's injury and that round 7 bye approaching, who's a potentially good trade option for QB if the plan is to get Jackson back in a few weeks? Now, we haven't covered exactly what it's like when you want to do that, but his next question, part of the question goes to, do you go safe with someone like Mahomes, or is it worth taking on someone like Fields or Prescott, who are good options that could make money over the few weeks with your plan to switch back to Lamar?
Yeah, like I said, if my plan is for money, it's actually Fields, because I think with that rushing baseline and those awesome matchups, I think he actually has the ability to actually really make that difference. Like if you're dropping down, saving God knows, 12, 13, 14 million dollars. I think he can bridge that gap in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then you're actually spending less money to then trade him back to Lamar. Dak worries me a little bit just because I know he had an amazing game last week against the Packers. But the fact is, he doesn't have his wide receiver one right now. And yes, George Pickens looked great, but I just have trouble trusting that situation week to week at the moment. Like, I would much rather CD there if I was taking a shot on Dak. So obviously we just don't know exactly when CD is going to be back for him. So I would probably rather Fields out of those couple of options. I don't mind Mahomes, like I mentioned, but break even 39, just 2 years of sample size of things not looking great for Mahomes in fantasy. So I need to see more from him. So yeah, I've definitely outlined the guys that I'm looking at. I'm preferring to actually go to running back in that flex position.
So for Tim O'Donnell, don't rule that out. Don't feel like you just got to go quarterback for quarterback here, because it sounds like there's the opportunity where one of these guys was probably flex, and it can really open some doors for you and give you new avenues to move over the coming weeks. I've got another one here. This one's from Shane. No last name. He's kind of like Cher, Jesus, Madonna. Baudo from when he came onto our podcast at the NFL Fantasy Show. Mate, his question is, would you burn 2 trades before the mega buy in round 8 to make sure that you do have a full squad? Or do you just kind of play 2 guys down to avoid sacrificing the trades?
I think there's a middle ground in this question. I don't want to just be burning them up right now, obviously, but I still think we have enough time to prep for that week already. Like, what I would more or less be doing is I wouldn't be making trades based off, say, week 8 now, but in, say, week 7, if you've got like a 50-50 call, I would just base it on the fact that there's a bye the week after. Like, there might be a situation where you want to upgrade to a wide receiver, but you can't take the wide receiver, obviously, that's going to be in on bye next week, so you take the other guy you were looking at who isn't. You know what I mean? I just feel like there's a situation where you can use it to your advantage closer to the fact instead of sort of using trades to try and avoid those players now. So, yeah, I think it'll be something we touch on in the next couple of weeks a little bit more. But I don't think you need to be looking at it overly when it's still 3 weeks away.
The last one I've got here, Tay, doesn't actually have a name credit to it. So I'll just say it's from... Oh, sorry. No, I do. There is a name credit to it. It's from Jacob Bryan. And he wants to know what your thoughts are on just benching Lamar, doing the hold, and then trading McCarthy to Dart, just using him, or just do you need a gun in that position?
Yeah, it's we already sort of touched on it when we're speaking about Dar. I don't love it. It's just you're sitting $29 million on your bench for 3 weeks. Like, that's, when you do the math, it's basically like a third of the season that you're actually sitting a $29 million play there. Obviously we don't know exactly the status of McCarthy. There's a decent chance he could be back in a couple of weeks. I know they're overseas at the moment, so when they get back, there's probably a better chance they look to McCarthy over Wentz. So, yeah, I don't love that route. I think we've got enough trades and enough ability to move that I think we could just use that trade on Lamar elsewhere and get another gun. And then obviously if you need to get Lamar back after that bye in week 7, we can go back to him. So yeah, I don't love the Dart play and having to rely on him because we just don't have enough sample size of what it looks like.
Always move, and I don't know that's necessarily one that's going to win you anything. So I concur, Tay. Mate, sorry, I saw there was a second part to the Tim O'Donnell question, and I was just going to also ask for me because I think it's a good question to ask. Who do you see as being a good defensive option over the next 5 or so weeks? Because, mate, we have to work with full team defenses. So you're not relying on one individual player stats. You're kind of taking the sum of the whole. Is there anyone who kind of leaps out for you?
Yeah, I decided to have a look at it or do a little bit of a deep dive on some matchups for the defenses over the next few weeks. So the first one is the Patriots. They don't have an amazing matchup this week. They play the Bills, so you'd probably want a different option to start this week. But after that, it just opens up massively. So they've got the Saints, the Titans, and then the Browns. Like, that is basically the 3 best matchups for a defense, quarterback-wise. So I think they are an amazing play if you just want to wait a week if you don't have them and get them next week, they're in a great situation. The Rams, they've got the Niners, who are completely depleted this week. They also will get the Ravens the week after, who possibly still don't have Lamar, because that's the week before their bye. Then they've got the Jags, so that's not an amazing matchup, but it's not something I'm steering away.
I'm not scared of them.
And then they go into the Saints. So that's 4 pretty decent matchups. One really sneaky one, and these guys are super cheap. They're like just over $5 million. Is the Browns. They have an amazing pass rush of Myles Garrett. They're coming up against the Vikings, who have depleted offensive line, and Carson Wentz this week. Then they play the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers, another statue who takes a lot of sacks. The Dolphins, obviously, with Tua, and his offensive line is terrible, and obviously he's missing Tyreek Hill for the rest of the season. The Patriots, who I just don't think they're an amazing offense enough to worry about from your defensive side, and then the Jets, obviously. So, I just feel like those 3 teams that I really, really like their schedules over the next 5 or so weeks.
Yeah, look, and the first one I went to was, Rams. I just know that the Rams, I've been rolling with the Jaguars, and they've created a lot of money. So were the cheapest defense, them and the Titans were the cheapest defenses in all of SuperCoach. So I just ran with them, stuck the Jags in. They've been generating turnovers like nobody's business, and that is how you score fantasy points in SuperCoach. You have to pick a defense who you think is going to generate turnovers. Just holding a team to not a lot of points isn't going to do it unless you can hold a team to 0, which is super rare. We've seen 2 of them all year. And there's been 16 games a week. So you can't rely on that. You need to go for a team you think can just generate turnovers. It's a very fluky position, but there are some indicators. If you've got a defense that is going up against some offenses that have had trouble scoring, oftentimes it's because they've just turned the ball over and their possession has ended. So it's the best advice I can give is to just think about it in terms of turnovers, which is super fluky, but that's about the best way you can go hunting that out. And I just went for Rams. I did a straight swap, Jags for Rams. It cost pretty much the same amount of money. And I feel like I've really ridden the Jags and made money out of them in a way that was kind of a bit cheeky. I kind of feel like I got a cheat code there.
Their defense is better than it seemed like. They're actually doing a lot better than a lot of the stats said, a lot of the data said that they would be doing this year. So, yeah.
I was willing to eat very little points from them, and they've been surprisingly good. So I kind of feel like I need to stop now. I can't keep rolling 6s, Tay. Every time you roll the dice, you don't get a 6. And I feel like this might be the week where that runs out because Kansas just don't turn the ball over like that. So, I've moved into Rams personally, and I'm going to be happy sitting on them until the Jags schedule softens up again. I get to see the Texans and the Titans again, mate. That's when they'll be back. Talking about trades, I've done that trade, and I also did the trade where I've taken Lamar out. You went to a running back when you took Lamar out. Do you want to just cap on that again and why you did it?
Yeah, look, with my trades, I'm looking to hold a boost. I just think it's going to be the 2 trades for me. I've even got a little bit of a future plan with the 2 trades that I'm doing this week. So my first trade is Njoku to Waller. Obviously, I've just sort of held Njoku, hoping things might get a little bit better. I've been sort of happy to take that $2 million loss. But now I just don't see a world where things get any better. He's not even getting all the snaps at the tight end position. It's just, they've got a rookie in Dylan Gabriel coming in. It's just not a situation I want to be a part of. And he's still at a price that I think I can make money on. So I'm going him down to Waller, even though obviously Waller doesn't make money this week. It's saving me losses on Njoku, and then obviously gives me the ability to bank that money. So I've also gone Lamar to get to Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs up against the Bengals. That could be fucking anything this week. So I want to jump that. And that also banks me $7 million. So I actually have $13 million in my bank. And what I'm actually looking to do is hold that for this week. And my hope is with George Kittle coming back after IR, I'm possibly looking at maybe shifting Hawkinson, if he obviously doesn't start to turn things around, over to Kittle, and then giving me that sort of locked and loaded tight end starter. Then I can sort of move, Waller at that sort of low dollar value back to my bench, and then I'll be sitting there starting Kittle and Tyler Warren. So yeah, that's just a bit of a future plan I'm looking at, and that's why I'm sort of holding on to that money that I'm banking and not just going out there and overtly spending it just because it's sitting there.
Yeah. Mate, I did a very similar thing with when I moved Lamar out because I already had Jameer Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey as my like two super stud. You can't fuck with these guys running backs. I just then went and took Jonathan Taylor. He's been just so steady with his volume, and the offense really relies on him. Dan Jones has only thrown one touchdown pass each week because the rushing volume is still such a key part of how Indianapolis remain balanced and keep that ball moving. So I've done that in the interim, and I imagine my move will then be that Taylor will move up into one of my starting spots on a week where, say, Gibbs is on the bye in the mega bye week, and it takes some pressure off my bench. And then it gives me the flexibility to do something else, like maybe move into a receiver where I'm going to be missing Amon-Ra, Puka, and Jacoby Myers that week. So that's kind of my future thinking, and this is where it gets me that new avenue to do something different that not everyone's doing, but also gets me starting to think about my week 8 without making a trade that's specifically targeted at week 8.
Can I make one little, just before we close out the half a day podcast? For anyone that is deciding to downgrade Lamar and has plans to get him back, I implore you not to go out and just spend that money, because if you downgrade to someone that's low 20 million, you bank that 7 million, and you go spend it this week, you're then going to be left short when you're trying to get Lamar back in 3 or so weeks. So the idea is that don't go spend all that money that you've just saved on downgrading Lamar thinking how good's this, because it's then going to be hard to then force yourself into a trade to get that money back to then upgrade someone else to Lamar. So please don't just spend it. I'm personally spending it, on, say, Kittle next week because I think he could be a difference maker at tight end, but I'm still leaving myself around 6 or 7 million on top of that to sort of sit there and wait out when Lamar comes back, because you need to have a plan in this situation. You can't just be, saying I'm going to get Lamar back without actually realizing how you're going to do it.
He's going to be $29 million when he comes back. Like, that's the thing. His price is not going to move. So you need to be ready for that. And, you can't just sell one guy to get that $29 million, because Lamar is currently the most expensive player in all of SuperCoach. So very wise and sage-like, Tay, as we've come to expect from you.
Thanks, mate. It was good to have someone to actually talk to about this advice instead of just talking to myself like last week.
Have you, I don't know, it's probably 50-50. Have you enjoyed having me back?
No, I think so, mate. My heart feels a bit better. It feels a bit stronger. It doesn't feel like I've run a marathon. I'm still definitely talking fast like I normally do, but the good thing is I get to actually have a break and have a reprieve when you speak. So that's definitely felt a lot better, mate. And I think it definitely helps the product in general, having both of us.
I think so, he says. Who knew podcasting was a cardio sport?
It is for me. Maybe that's time to maybe hit the gym or go for a few more runs.
That is solid. Podcasting is difficult, and this is why I prefer not to do it as well, Tay. It's so much nicer having the company, and it does give you that opportunity to collect your thoughts. Especially for us two who do a little bit of comic relief on the side as well. It gives you a chance to really craft your joke as well, which mate, I thoroughly enjoy getting that opportunity.
Me too, mate. Me too.
This will just about wrap it up for episode 9 of the SuperCoach Halfa. We've pulled some of that classic what do you do apart when a big star goes down, and a situation that's new now that will very soon become part of the furniture when it comes to navigating the bye weeks. So, mate, look, thank you very much for all the insight and research you've brought. I've really enjoyed preparing for the show this week as well. After knowing I missed last week, I knew I had to bring the heat this week. Hopefully we've helped some super coaches out there.
Hope so, mate. But like I said, they've been such good supporters of us that I really, really do hope that the advice we're giving, is helping. Obviously, I went out on a limb and put my balls on the table for Ashton Genty last week, and a lot of people, he was in the most sold list, and I was basically imploring people to not do that. I made a huge proclamation that I thought he would have 2 touchdowns at least last week, and that was definitely advice that seemed to work. So I'm hoping that what we're doing is helping. Obviously, we're not going to get everything right, but as long as we have, reason for our madness or reason for our what we're saying on our podcast, I feel like it should come out, in the way that the super coaches needed. But again, thanks so much for the support, guys. And honestly, if you guys ever need anything from us that we're not doing currently, please don't be scared to reach out to us. We won't see it as a bad thing. We always want to improve this product for you guys. So yeah, thanks again, guys. It's been amazing. This ride ride so far.
It really has been. And don't forget to subscribe just so you never miss a show when they drop. And if you're hungry for more NFL and gridiron, make sure you just check out the other shows on the network. While you're already here, subscribing helps you do that too, because then it'll help you get access to the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show, which is your full-length fantasy fix and home of the Aussie NFL fantasy community, really. G'day Gridiron, which is Aussie analysis of the big NFL news. They preview the most compelling games and also the big standalone games, the Monday night and the Thursday night games there. And then Aussie Gridiron Today, which is a touch point for gridiron being played here in Australia, based in the ACT, but also with a little eye to the other associations around the country. You can find us at Aussie NFL Fantasy on Instagram, or you can hit us up directly at TALOR41, at Matty Podcast. Keep those questions flying in because they keep the show alive and they keep our heart rates pumping, don't they, Tay?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Doesn't take much to make my heart pump, apparently.
Oh, me either, mate. I'm in my mid-40s. Just getting out of bed will do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us today. And until next week, Super Coaches, go and get them. Hooroo!
Hooroo. Thank you, Super Coaches.
SuperCoach Halfa. Get your edge, get it faster. Taylor leads, Matty's laughter. NFL SuperCoach Halfa. NFL SuperCoach Halfa. Get your edge, get it faster.